Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast, and I'm your host, Todd Armstrong. On today's episode, I'm happy to have on this guest. She has been through the ringer in life and has come out the other side, obtaining knowledge and healing along the way. She's a terrific follow on Twitter. Please welcome Stone Buddha to the show.
Hey.
Hello, Stone Buddha. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm so glad that you were on. So just to,
Thanks for having me.
I mean, this was amazing that I messaged you this morning, so you have like 10,000 followers. I have like 20 followers. And I messaged you this morning. I'm like, hey, I want to set something up. And you're like, boom, let's do it. And
Yeah, why
it
not?
came together so quickly. And we were just chatting here for the last 10, 15 minutes. And we have so much in common.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
very, very similar paths. And we both started awakening at the same time, which is very, not coincidental.
No, definitely not.
But I'm so glad you're here. So why don't you give the audience a little introduction of yourself, like who you are, and let them hear from you.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm just me. I've been spiritual my whole life, really. As a little girl, I would walk to church all by myself. There was a church around the corner. I was just like drawn to it.
Christian church?
It was a Lutheran church.
Lutheran
It
church,
was
okay.
it was like right behind my house, and I remember being really little and just walking there all by myself, just drawn there.
Oh, wow.
So my whole life, really, and and then as I grew up, I kind of got into like occult stuff and this, that, and other. But I really found direction around 2017. I started studying under a Native American shaman, and it really gave my spiritual path more direction. And around that time, I attended a sacred Native American dance ceremony as an invited guest. And I decided in that moment, I was like, I need to take part in this. This is amazing. So a couple years passed, and I finally did my first one in 2019. And the way that they say with these ceremonies, they're like, the moment you agree to be a part of the ceremony, the ancients will start working with you. So I guess they started working with me in 2017 and then kicked it into high gear in 2019. And since right before and just after that,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
go ahead. No, go
derail
ahead.
you. So what state, or actually what region of the country are you? And are you in America?
I'm in North Carolina.
Okay, North Carolina. Okay, so I was just asking, for the Native American groups, is there a specific
they all
group
work together out here. The one that I studied under is Cherokee.
Cherokee, okay.
Yeah, but they don't really divide themselves by that. There's all different kinds that come together.
So are you part of a Native American indigenous church?
No.
Okay.
I just attend a ceremony here and there, and we sit with each other. We do sweat lodge and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, that sounds pretty awesome. I actually want to go to a sweat lodge, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can continue with your story.
You're fine. Well, I mean, after that, it was like, I like jokingly say the ancients they adopted me and took me under their wing, because it's like I started experiencing the connectiveness of all things. I had a moment where I had actually stopped smoking weed for a really long time after this experience. I had taken a rather large bong rip, and I was watching something on TV, and all of a sudden everything in existence made sense to me, and I saw the world as like a fractal.
When was this?
This was 2019.
Was it like June, April? Was it like May?
Yep.
Oh my, that's exactly what happened to me. I swear on anything. I took a bong rip that was too big, and it cracked open my crown chakra.
Yep. I looked at you could ask my husband, Electric Mage, on Ben. I looked up at him and I was like, I think I just broke my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because my mind, it was scary. I was terrified for quite a while after that. I
So
had
I
to.
guess we're probably working with the same ancients, or at
Oh,
least
probably
I don't
so.
know if I'm working with them anymore. Actually, I think I evolved away from them, but at least for a long period of time, I was working with those. That's just, that's uh, the oddest synchronicity that I could ever imagine having with somebody.
Yeah, for real. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I legitimately thought that I had lost my mind. I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God, but
That was
we're
Christmas for you that year.
I barely even, time is so weird these
Well,
days.
I only say Christmas because that's when things kicked into high gear for me. Was
Really?
with my crown chakra being opened as well. I had several psychedelic experiences just before, at like in November and October. No, it was like a 40-day period from like the end of October to like the beginning of December that I had these psychedelic experiences, and Christmas was like my brain just boom. But that's
Yeah. Well,
that.
I know that the year following was kind of difficult trying to find my footing in that new headspace
Mm,
or lack of headspace, if that makes sense.
right.
And I've gotten the very clear direction to remain in the now moment. So I've noticed that since I started doing that, I don't remember things the same way. Time is very confusing for I can't tell you what I did this morning because I'm so focused on remaining in the present moment that I don't
Mhm.
even really log memories, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. I do the same thing. I quite often I find myself so absorbed in the now moment that I forget the most mundane thing.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Mm.
And this morning feels like it was like 3 weeks ago. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's you know what? Like I tell my girlfriend all the time, like it's May right now, and I'm like, this year went by so fast. But then I'm like, it's only 2:30 in the afternoon right now. I've done so much today.
yeah.
This morning feels like last year. Like
Yep.
sometimes I wake up from sleep and I'm like, I feel like I've been sleeping for like 3 years now. Yeah, like
Yep.
no
Yep.
lie. Like I've been.
It feels like it too. You wake up feeling sore and stiff.
Yeah, exactly. I wake up like sometimes at like 11 or 12 at night, and I go to sleep at maybe like 9 o'clock, and I'll wake up 2 hours later, and I have to sit up and crack my body and like, move all around to
Yeah.
because and then go back to sleep because it's been so long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
It's
like, it's
crazy.
only 2 hours. I was like, man, it was like 2 decades ago that I that I laid down to sleep. What do you mean
Yeah.
2 hours?
Yep. I totally feel that.
Wow, so that's amazing. We didn't know any of this. Just so everybody knows, this is the first time that we ever connected was today
Yep.
about this podcast. I knew who you were last year when I was on Twitter, when I
Oh, so
got
you
onto
probably saw
Twitter.
me sort through some stuff on Twitter. You may have
Yeah,
seen me like, yep.
yeah, I was on there. My name was Philly for Faux, but you probably didn't know me. I had less followers than you, but I knew who you were, but we never really connected. I didn't really try reaching out to when I was following QAnon. I didn't reach out to anyone actually, and it's odd that it worked out that way, but probably because a lot of them were probably bots, or
Yeah.
CIA.
Yeah.
Disinformation agents. So I never felt the urge to connect with any of them. And it's
Yeah.
only recently that now I'm feeling the urge to connect with people. And, this connection with you is, had we connected last year about QAnon, we
Yeah.
might not have found out about this amazing connection that we're actually having right now. So
Absolutely. That transcends that. Yeah.
yeah, so this is amazing. So all the live audience, anyone that's here, none of this is pre-planned other than, just a general observation of, what we're going to talk about. But this story that she's telling me right now is just blowing my mind because it's me,
Yeah.
essentially.
It's
So
wild.
yeah, so I'm sorry, but go ahead. What you
Oh
were saying.
no. I think a lot of people are experiencing parallel experiences like this,
Yeah.
it just further confirms the whole we're all connected thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's happening as above, so below has never been a more true statement
Absolutely.
because, I'll give a little example. Last week, a friend of mine got married on the same day that a friend of mine brought home the ashes of her husband, on the same day that I asked someone's a friend, a female friend, something, and she said yes to me. And it was like all of a sudden it's the masculine and feminine energies just all
Yeah,
came together. And
it's wild.
it's as above, so below. And I'm so glad to have someone on that knows it as well as you do, so that my audience can hear this for the first time. Like those types of things, I see it. Like my cat will do something, then my daughter will do something, then
Yeah.
I do something, and I got to find the connection. Like, it's
What
this,
does
this,
it
and this.
mean? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh
And
yeah.
you can figure out what's about to happen to you physically when you start to see that everything first happens spiritually. And if you find your connection of what will happen first, like I see if something happens with my cat, I know that it's something similar is going to eventually happen to me. Now,
Yeah.
if she kills a lizard, for example, I know that in a meditation upcoming, I'm going to battle a reptile. I
Yeah.
just know it.
Yep.
And then it happens all the time. Different things like that happen. And it's so refreshing to be able to speak to someone who
Yeah.
understands that.
Yeah, if you don't have a basic understanding of the fractal nature of our universe, it's
Mhm.
really difficult to wrap your head around that, because it's also very personal to each person. Like
Yeah.
your symbolism is going to be different from my symbolism, which is going to be different from someone else's symbolism.
Right.
And it's just a concept that can be understood, not necessarily explained very well.
Mhm.
We can help people connect the dots in that way, but ultimately it's something they have to do on their own.
Well, yeah, it's exactly like the conspiracy theory stuff where like you got to do your own research. We can't make you see the lies for being lies unless you see the truth, or
Absolutely.
or something that breaks you from the lie anyway.
Right.
And in the same way with this, like if I was to have this conversation with a brother of mine, for example, maybe he would be like, well, why don't you tell me how it's supposed to happen? Because he's in the matrix of this one shared reality that his truth is my truth, is your truth, that it's
Right.
everybody thinks the same way. uh, but it's not that. This isn't a shared reality in that sense where a whole bunch of people told us that the earth was round, so then therefore we created it to become round.
Right.
uh,
Right.
so yeah, so when you're talking to somebody about this, who maybe not this detail, but somebody who is in the shared reality, what what do you find is the easiest way to connect to them, to show them in their own life, what you see in yours?
I honestly haven't tried to do that. I've found that the best way to help people along their journey is to ask them questions that will lead them to answering their own questions, if that makes sense, because it is
Oh yeah.
something that they have to figure out themselves. So I actually ended up isolating myself big time after I realized all this, because I was like, holy shit, who am I hurting? Who's hurting me? Like,
Hmm.
who am I helping? So I don't know how I would explain that. It's, for someone who already understands it, it's easy. I could show you a picture and you would know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And a picture would just tell an entire story that you would understand. But explaining it to somebody who doesn't understand, I usually just try to encourage people to heal, because that's how I ended up on this path, was
Yeah.
by focusing on healing my trauma. And
Mhm.
eventually everything just kind of clicked. You
Yeah.
have to get all the buried underneath everything that has lowered your frequency, everything that has told you you're not worth it, everything that has done all that clutter in your mind, is a little quantum computer that is perfectly capable of making all these connections in 0.000001 seconds. Like, you can figure out literally any probable future if you clear the clutter. You
Mhm.
gotta stop worrying about things, stop heal all your trauma and clean off that little quantum computer in there and let it work. And then it's just magic after that.
Yeah, it's the giving away all of your need to control anything by
Absolutely.
just observing your life as if you're a bystander in your own life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's that 0 point that you got to get to, which will then allow you to raise your 0 point, which is what you and I have done essentially. You know, a lot of people that get to that stage of conspiracy theory, they get stuck there.
Yep.
And it's very easy to get stuck in the conspiracy theories, always looking for the next conspiracy theory, always looking for, I hear people say it all the time. They say, where do I turn now? It's like, oh, I went down this rabbit hole, and then, where do I turn next? Then I go to this one, and where do I turn? And they feel like they're following a path of information, which they are. But
absolutely.
But once you get to a certain point, the conspiracy theories in general well enough to understand that it's all bullshit and you don't need any of it. That it was just to break you free of the programming.
Absolutely. I mean, the conspiracy theories are just as real but different as the stories on the mainstream media. Yeah, it's all an illusion.
Yeah, exactly. And what did it for me was, it's not even like that they're necessarily wrong. It's probably correct information, right? For the most part, there's a lot of paranoid people that are being convinced of things. People don't just trust anything for the most part, and they do their research into this information. And nobody can tell you anything, right? We all think for ourselves, and it's all our own experience that allows us to then give something belief. So we get so stuck. But what did it for me is knowing that, oh, they're giving you the real information on the message boards and the fake information in the news. It's the same person. It's the same entity. That's, they're giving you this to make you crazy, to make people not believe you. That's what they're doing.
The thing is, it does not become reality until we believe it. And some people have chosen to believe some very non-beneficial things. And it's like I jokingly say that the conspiracy theory section of the Matrix is right at the exit door of the Matrix. So many people almost make it out and then get stuck there, because why not? It's very interesting. But in order to make it through that door, you have to accept that you are responsible for your own life, that you were the only enemy you ever had. You're also your own hero. And then you get to walk out that door, get that higher perspective, and look at everything like it's like the TV show it was meant to, like the Truman Show. Like it becomes entertainment at that point. The conspiracy theory section is a labyrinth in itself.
Yeah, it's the next layer. I just did episode 10 was called Ground Zero, and it's about how we ground ourselves after the conspiracy theories, how the conspiracy theories break us from the lies of the mainstream narrative, and then we break free from the lies of the
conspiracy,
right? And then we get, and it's not necessarily lies. I don't want to have someone thinking that I'm saying all conspiracy theories are lies, but no, it's just a deception. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not, because there's nothing you can do about it. That's what the ultimate game of the conspiracy theory is, from the they standpoint, the mythical they, right? It's just it's always to make the truth at a distance. So now, what I see happening a lot is people are saying, fuck you, I'm taking my ball, I'm going home, I'm not playing your game any longer. I don't care, if the Suez Canal gets blocked by a ship. I'm not playing, I'm not participating. It's bullshit. And I'm not going to ship. I don't care.
Yeah,
because exactly. Is it children being saved on it? Well, that if there are children in need of being saved and they were on it, that's amazing. But in how is whatever happens in possibly the Suez Canal going to affect you in your immediate life. It's not.
And
But
that's
what it is what you can do yourself to heal,
exactly,
as you
and that's what people need to be focusing on. And that's why,
letting go.
I've obtained quite a few foes as a result of that mentality, because a lot of people have the mentality of, how can you be happy while there's suffering in the world? Or why aren't you pissed
The
about
suffering's
this?
in me.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I'm suffering.
I'm suffering. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
suffering
it's
from
like
your
not in
inability to
this.
see through the illusion.
Well, no, not even that. It's how you said the fractal nature of reality. So the nature, is a fractal, is a self-iterating fractal, and it's just a human shape. Like on the bathroom, how it has just like a shape of a man. That's what our universe is, self-repeating over and over on the tiniest scale, on the largest
Yep.
scale.
Yeah,
It's that's what it is.
absolutely. We're all actually, like, at any given moment, we're all experiencing the exact same expression, or no, we're the exact same thing in different expressions. Like, does that make sense? Like, the fractal,
Mhm. Yeah, the same energy.
yeah, it's just the
Yeah.
same thing at various frequencies. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
if the grand mind that is source, that is God, that is Allah, whatever you choose to call it, thinks, I love all humans, we all express the love for humans at the frequency at which we resonate. So someone at a high frequency that's
Yeah, that's
close to
perfect.
source is going to be like, I love humans. Someone who's at a very far frequency, a low frequency from source, is going to be like, I fucking hate humans. Because love
Mhm.
said at the love frequency means love. Love said at the fear frequency means hate.
Mhm.
It's not good or evil or whatever. It's just a frequency difference. So
Right.
with that's how the fractal nature works, is like, it
Right.
starts as a ripple close to source and works its way down to the fear frequency, and it looks different. It's the same thing, but it looks different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And so what I was saying with the human shape is that people argue about the Earth being flat and being round. The Earth is a human. It is the self-iterating fractal, and it does have a quote unquote firmament. It's just we are inside. If you could imagine, you are inside my arm, someone, Hawaii maybe, or Alaska, or whoever, and the outside is the inside of my skin is the firmament. That's how
Right.
it is with everyone. So when someone's suffering in Detroit, that's because I'm treating my kidney poorly, or wherever it is that
Right.
correlates on my body. I need to
Right.
heal myself. So it's not, I can't physically go there to heal that person,
But
but
you
I
could
can
take
heal
care
that
of
person
yourself.
by healing what's wrong with me. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's where so many people are getting
And
mixed up, because even when they think they
yes.
understand that, they don't. The way that we heal our world,
Mhm.
the way that we transcend all this bullshit, fear and anger and all that, is by focusing on yourself. If you become the
Mhm.
absolute best version of yourself, then you heal the you that exists in everybody else, and in
Right.
turn you're healing everybody else.
Yeah. Nothing is external.
Exactly. By focusing within, healing, raising your own frequency. If everybody on the planet did that, everybody would be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And
They
I
have,
tell my girlfriend that all the time. I say, it's the Midas touch. If I can make myself pure gold because I'm, healing myself completely, everything I touch therefore will be gold. And therefore they will start to raise to be that gold, because once you start to
exactly.
feel it, you want
Yep.
it more and
Ju-
more. And
just
that's how
being
we
in
heal
the
the whole world.
presence, absolutely. Just being in the presence of a healed and whole person will naturally, without effort, heal and help become whole everybody who comes in contact with them. It's just,
Mhm.
that it's like a virus. You heal yourself,
Mhm.
people want that. They see you at a high frequency, and people want to be like that too, and they start healing themselves. It just ripples out into the fractal
Right.
universe.
You're exactly right. And when I'll give an example of that. It's like when you go to the grocery store, I'm doing a lot of healing on myself. So like, as you just said, when you're near someone who's healed, you have a different vibration about them. So when I go to the grocery store, I don't wear a mask and nobody ever says anything to me. But that same version of me that I was, 2 years ago, everyone would have been saying, where's your mask, and arguing with me,
Yep.
because that's the vibrational energy field that I carried with me, was to start an argument. But now it's like I'm a ghost and people don't even notice me.
Yep, same here. There's only, now that you say it like that, I didn't really think about it. There was one time that somebody said something to me about wearing a mask, and it was the same day that I had like an internal battle with myself, and that's how it manifested. Was,
Yeah,
you know,
that too.
yeah, normally when I go out, nobody says anything to me. I seamlessly and flawlessly walk around, nobody says anything. But this one particular day, I had a little rough inner turmoil, I guess, if you will. And then that very same day when I went out, I went to the store and the lady was just nasty. And I was like, you're talking to me like I talked to myself this morning. I see you, Fractal. Goodbye.
Yeah, I had it happen a couple of weeks ago. I went to Best Buy to get a computer for the podcast, and it was like the Matrix didn't want me getting it, because I walk in Best Buy and someone's sitting there monitoring the door. They're like, excuse me, sir, we need you to wear a mask. And she's like, we have them right here. I was like, oh, no thanks. And I just walked out,
Yeah.
but it turned out I did that. Like, I went to like 7 stores and didn't get a computer that day. And it was like a couple hours. And it was like, man, what did I do to myself today? that, why
Yep.
did I bother going through this process? The computer I ended up buying, I had in my cart of, for like 4 days, but I just had to go in person. I just had to make
Yep.
sure that, Best Buy was going to keep me out.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's always how it works.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really fun. And when you can
Yeah, I
see
have to
it,
learn the hard way.
yep. Yep.
Hey, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, when you can see the connections like that, it's always funny because you're like, I'm doing this to myself. Like,
Yeah.
when you can see how it's all connected, it's so funny.
Right. And it's so funny that we're talking about what we are right now, because I saw someone on Twitter yesterday posted a post that had Daniel 12:10 in it. And the verse is, many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. And that's exactly what we're talking about right now. And
Yep.
if you're not understanding this right now, it's, maybe it's because you have to turn off all the external noise, all the stuff that you're doing in your free time, all those bad thoughts that you tell yourself, all those negative things that you're seeing in your life. Maybe you should turn them off for a minute and get to know yourself.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
then you will become wise to what we are talking about. Once someone knows thyself, you
You'll
can
understand.
do,
If
you'll,
what we're saying doesn't make sense, it's because you don't have the same understanding. And I'm not saying that so many people get triggered by that. They're like, oh, you think you're better than me. No, just because you feel inferior because of that does not mean that I feel superior. I would love to help everybody
that's
understand.
projection.
Yeah. It's just a level of understanding. Instead of, when you get triggered by that and running away, try to understand, and that verse is so true to what's going on right now, is it not? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's how the people, I don't want to say people, but some conspiracy theorists, they say, all the sheep. And I used to say that too. And it's like, when you're at that stage, it's like when you're angry, not necessarily angry, when you're trying to wake people up and you're doing it from a place that isn't loving, you
right.
got to examine how you're operating, because you're not in a place of love if you're operating that manner. And I feel that's
Absolutely.
what happened to a lot of us last year.
Oh yeah, a lot of people got stuck and caught up in the anger of it all, like,
Mm-hmm.
and anger is a fear-based response. And I called people
Exactly.
sheep too, and to anybody I called a
Mm-hmm.
sheep, I'm sorry. it
Yeah,
was
me
an
too.
ignorant moment. We've all been sheep, but even, I mean,
Mhm.
again, with the fractal, there's different levels of sheep. I mean, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
it from the love frequency is so much more pleasant. Trying to help people understand and help them untangle their minds so that they can make their way out. Doing it from a place of anger is only going to make it worse and possibly cause more trauma for people. Doing it from a love frequency, it makes it a cakewalk. It makes it enjoyable for the person that's trying to get out of it. It makes it enjoyable for you. You know, helping people out
yeah,
of the mind trap matrix. If you can't do it from a place of love, that means that you need to focus on yourself and stop trying to help others until you can do it from a place of love. You're not in a position to help others if you cannot do it from a place of love. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I experienced this tremendously with my relationship with my daughter. Uh, we I'll end up telling the story in probably more detail on an episode where I don't have a guest on, but I just want to touch on a little bit here is, we were in a place where I was hard on her, harder than I should have been, way harder than I should have been on her about sports because she was so good and I was her coach. And I was thought I was doing it from a place of love. But what ended up happening was it caused friction between us. And then
Mm-hmm.
we moved 750 miles away and I tore her away from her, my family that was raising her,
Mm-hmm.
my parents and my siblings and their wives who were, all of them helped to raise her while I was away for prison. And so I tore her away. So she and I, our relationship, while it was very good when we were both living in the matrix, when we moved, it became very testy because she didn't have anywhere to run off to. So, what she was doing essentially back in the when we were both in the Matrix was she would go over to my parents' house, or she would go to my brother's house, or she'd go to a friend's house, and we weren't really ever spending time together. So it's not that we weren't spending time together, but our free time from softball we weren't spending together. So she was running from me in a sense, and then
Yeah.
we were together and she had nowhere else to run. And also for me, I was kind of pushing her away to go to those other. I was more than happy to take her to her grandparents or her cousins or her friend's house, and it took us to be together. So what ended up happening is I had a very bad temper that I've been releasing for the years now, and during Christmas break, she went back up to Pennsylvania. And I told her when she came back, I was like, look, no more punishments. I'm not going to punish you any longer. We're not going to operate out of a fear-based mentality for you. And what did I do? I started loving her all the time. And when she would yell at me, I would love her. And when she would say the most hateful things and, stuff that made me cry, honestly, uh, and I would just hug her and love her. And what happened is we healed our relationship and to observe what she was doing to the point that she had a spiritual awakening herself and we connected
Wow.
in the spirit world. And she physically knows this. And, we physically discussed some of it, but she's afraid to tell her story to me yet. But it
Yeah.
was out of love. It was exactly what you were saying. It was, I said no more fear-based. I took out the punishment, and then slowly from there over the next 5 months, I apologize for all the times that I've hurt her. I would seriously think about, when did I hurt her? What did I do wrong? What was a repeated action that I did? And I would, out of nowhere, I would come up to her and apologize, be a sincere apology. And then, next time we were maybe arguing, I would hug her. But it got so bad to the point, I hit her, I spanked her probably more in the 6 months that we were here than I did her entire life before that. I
Wow.
was never a hitter, but she was, it was really, really bad and it was really, really tough. And now it's like we're two different, very different people, because I took the initiative to love her no matter what she did to me.
Yep.
And that I took the initiative of apologizing for things she wasn't even thinking of. So I didn't allow those negative thoughts to, you know, fester in her mind and in her chakras.
That's so beautiful. It's incredible. And I
Oh
hope more
yeah,
people parent that way. Yeah.
yeah,
You're also teaching her unconditional love, which most, let's be real, most of us have never had that. You know, our parents say
oh
they
yeah,
love us unconditionally, but then they show us conditions. So that's
yeah,
really a beautiful thing. It's
yeah.
incredible how different things get when you operate from that love frequency. It's incredible. I mean,
Oh
that's
yeah.
just beautiful.
Oh, it is. And, I just want to say for anyone listening, like I go, I'm sure you do too. Everybody does. We go through our internal battles,
Oh
and
yeah.
and our lives aren't perfect. But
No.
when something, I have a bad day at work, I'm not sitting there thinking about it, stewing on it the rest of my day, allowing it, I don't even think about it when it's happening. Now I see it and I'm operating out of a place of love, and I'm just like, oh, okay,
This is a
this is
thing
going to
that's
benefit
happening.
me. Right.
Yeah.
This will benefit me later, but right now
Hmm.
I just have to take my lumps, and then it'll be okay. And that's
Yeah.
what every day when things go wrong, I'm like, okay, I'll just wait. And then, ta-da.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It's like the storm passes, it clears, and you're like, oh, thank God. You know,
yeah,
it's about living in the present moment and not beating yourself up over those moments. Let it go.
yeah,
Just let it go. There's nothing you could do about it. It happened. It was out of your control. Let it go.
yeah. No, I mean, you're exactly right with all that. And yeah, with my daughter, it's been such an amazing change, a transformational thing. And I'm so blessed because it was months and months and months. I'm trying to have her observe what she's
Hmm.
doing. Like you're getting yelled at because you're responding this way. And it
Yep.
took months and months of shaving off all of those negative reactions for her to then she got to the point a couple of weeks ago where she bit her tongue and didn't say anything back to me. She didn't literally bite her tongue, but
Right.
she didn't say anything back to me. Two different times in 1 week, she didn't say anything back to me. And then a few days later is when we connected in the spirit world, when she was sleeping and I was meditating. We connected, and ever since then, she's been spiritually awake. It's been a few
Wow.
weeks now, but it was but it took all those times where we had to learn to stop hating each other, stop being in a place of fear, stop operating
Hmm.
in a vibrational state of I'm going to hit you if you don't listen to me.
Right.
Then it's I'm doing this because I love you, and I've told her my deep dark secrets so that she trusts me, and I don't have any secrets with her any longer.
That's
So that
beautiful.
she trusts me when she has something that she needs to talk to me about.
Yeah. And
And
that's it.
it's
That is
no, go ahead.
something, that is something so rare. I mean,
Well,
I
it needs to be done.
absolutely, absolutely. That's beautiful. Really.
Well, since we're sitting here talking about it's children, do you want to get into your story of what occurred to you that maybe your traumas that got you to the point where you needed healing, you needed that Native American healing ceremony?
Oh, with my, oh yeah. Oh man, you want to talk about some major childhood trauma. I actually went to the shaman I ended up studying under, because I was so desperate to heal the trauma that I had acquired from childhood sexual abuse. I knew that it was like the root cause of most of my suffering was a result of that. So
Well, well, I'm sorry to hear that because I just talked about this in my episode 5. I talked, it was very therapeutic for me, and I'm sorry that happened to you. It's a
oh no,
very,
well,
very hard thing to
well,
overcome.
the way that I was able to work through it was to, now it's not I'm sorry that happened to you, you know. Now I give it gratitude, which I know some people may not be able to understand, but the thing is had those things not happened to me, I would not have the ability to know how strong I'm capable of being and how bright I could shine. Like, for many years, I allowed myself to live as the victim. Like, oh, well, all this terrible stuff happened to me, so I deserve this and I deserve that, and it's okay for me to do this because bad things happen to me. I excused terrible behavior because I was a victim. But then you come to a certain point where you're like, well, I don't want to be a victim anymore. That feels nasty and gross and low frequency, and I just don't want to be in that space anymore. So I went to see this Native American shaman, and through studying under her, she helped me understand how to spin your thinking. Like, you cannot change the past, you cannot change what happened, but you can change how you look at it. And that was a game changer for me. I can't change the fact that somebody hurt me in that way and nobody believed me and I had to grow up carrying this burden, but I can look back and say, damn, I survived some messed up stuff. Like, if that hadn't have happened to me, I may have never made it out on my own, if that makes sense. I was forced out of my family and to stand on my own 2 feet, where otherwise I may have bonded with my family and learned to that kind of mentality of sweeping things under the rug rather than addressing them head on. And I would pass that generational trauma, that those trauma patterns of ignoring problems and putting on a happy face and pretending everything is fine. I would have passed that on to my children. Those trauma.
Oh, I'm sorry
So,
about that.
oh no, it's fine. So it's it's all about learning how to release things, and you can do that. There's no textbook way to do that. You can do that in any way you feel will work for you. And for me, that was learning how to give my abuser gratitude. If you can give gratitude to something like that, you can survive pretty much anything. So it's like I said in that, earlier, it's taking what happened to me, and instead of saying, why did this happen to me? Why did this happen for me? What is this teaching me? And what it taught me was how to stand alone, how to be strong, how to allow myself to be vulnerable, and how to survive. And from that mentality, from switching how I looked at it, I went from a victim to a survivor. And I realized how strong I really am. So,
Well, that's amazing, and I feel very similarly, and this way of thinking is exactly what the mainstream doesn't want you to know, is that you're not a victim, no matter what happens to you, and it's very hard to come to terms with saying, which I don't ever try to say that to somebody, that I would never say you should be grateful that happened,
right,
but I never say to somebody, it's very hard to switch their thinking, and you don't want to put someone in a defensive position, which anything leading on to the way that you and I are discussing, if you're discussing this with someone who is in a traumatic situation at the moment, it's not going to work, and it's going to separate you from that person. Just so anyone's listening, you don't want to necessarily approach them. You want to allow them to live their life and
yeah.
experience what they need to experience, because this, while I agree exactly with what you're saying, and it's just so hard, that it's such a hard thing to do, to practice,
Oh yeah,
to
because it
be
that
actually
kind of,
grateful.
absolutely, that kind of abuse, it's not just about the person flipping their mentality to gratitude. There's so many behaviors that come along as a result of being abused that it creates a mental block. They cannot hear what you're saying. They cannot hear your intent behind it. you know you definitely don't want to be
Yeah.
like, well, you should be grateful for that. No, it's something that each person has to figure out on their own, which is why we can guide and we can comfort and we can help in that way. But the person, don't ever just tell someone who's been abused that they should be grateful. That doesn't connect the dots properly for them.
Right. So when I talk to my mom and I'll say something like, her and our relationship isn't the greatest, so that's why I'm bringing her up. So when I say to her, you know, like, I would like you to be more loving, supportive, and nice to me. Three feelings that I would like to receive from you would be, a loving feeling. And she'll say to me like, well, I'm sorry I wasn't the mother that you needed. And I'm like, no, you're exactly what I needed to get me to where I was. But she's like, but that doesn't make sense. I'm like, but no, now I need you to change, and then I'm saying to myself, while I am not necessarily grateful, I'm not at that stage yet with how I was treated by her. So I'm not at the grateful stage yet, but while I understand it was for my benefit, I know it was for my benefit, I'm still not grateful for being treated that way for so long. But it also, my line of thinking is that everything is purposely done in order to help me. Then I
Yep.
have to know that this is just part of that as well.
It's
But
somehow
so
leading
when I
to
say that
something
to
greater.
her,
Yeah.
right. And when I say that to her, that no, you are what I needed. And that just fucks her mind up because she's in the place like, what do you like?
Yeah, she
I
can't
don't
see.
understand. I'm not computing.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, that's how it goes, because you have to have empathy, and that's I think the ultimate issue between her and I. She doesn't have the empathy that.
Yep.
But I don't want to get into that. But
No, I get it that I have a similar type
yeah,
relation. Well, I don't have a relationship with my mother anymore, but when I did, it was some like they just don't understand. It's like blank stare, don't understand. It doesn't compute.
yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that you just said that.
I know, it's
We
so
have
crazy.
obviously we've been living the same life, just in different places.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you've been through addiction, and prison, I'm assuming, came from extending from the
Oh,
addiction.
no. Well, the prison was actually the addiction was a result of prison, I think. I mean, there's really no telling, but
Oh, okay.
I the prison I was in the state that I was in at the time, they have a law, the hand of one is the hand of all. If you're with somebody that commits a crime, then you're just as guilty as the person that committed it. So
Oh,
that's why I
wow.
went to prison was because I was with someone who committed a crime
Wow.
and I refused to
What was
narc
the
on
crime?
them.
Was it a
They
really bad crime?
yeah, it was pretty bad. They were trafficking cocaine.
Oh, okay.
And
Mm,
I wasn't about to narc on anybody. I probably could have gotten out of it if I wanted to like risk my life narking on drug lords. But I was like, no, I don't know anything, because I really didn't know anything. I could have guessed, but I didn't know anything. So I went to prison for a year for that. And honestly, it's probably one of like that was probably one of the biggest like eye-opening moments for me, was like seeing the corruption in there and how, it just really rewired my brain to how I would think about things like that. Like prior to prison, I was like, oh, people who go to prison are pieces of shit. Then I went to prison. I was like, well,
mm,
I'm not a piece of shit. That girl over there is not a piece of shit. She's not either. They're all nice people that made bad decisions, and it rewired my brain that way.
mhm.
Um, sorry for the language.
No,
And
you're
then
fine.
I ended up addicted to my own prescriptions. I started taking like the behavioral correction stuff,
Mm,
like ADD meds. And after an accident, I was on painkillers for a while. And then I found that I was addicted to those and I needed them, or I felt like I needed them, until it came to a point where I replaced all of my prescriptions with herbal remedies, with uh, plant medicine instead. But yeah, so I fully
mm,
understand the how addiction works. I mean, all of these things, again, it's I spin it in my reality to be stepping stones that got me to where I'm at. I now have the ability to work with and help other people who have been through abuse, who have been to prison, who have had substance abuse issues. I found my way out. So now I kind of like paved a little trail where I can, hey, look at this path I made. You can make one just like it, or you can walk on mine, whatever, and can help other people out of those spaces. And while I was healing, I realized that the addiction behavior it's all tied to childhood stuff. I mean, really, like, it was tied to being abused as a child. You search for something consistent that makes you feel good because mom and dad didn't do it.
Oh yeah.
This pill does it. So this
Mhm.
is something that can consistently make me feel good until it doesn't.
So, so amazing you say that, because I'm just coming to those understandings myself of my addiction. Because my sexual behavior as a young child, that was a suppressed memory of mine. So when I went through the addiction stage, and then to get to where I have this understanding now, there's a lot of information in there. And for a while, I thought that I was running from my mom. Now my mom's and my dad, but they weren't the ones that were, they didn't sexually abuse me or physically
Right.
abuse me. They didn't necessarily abuse me, but it was this suppressed memory of the sexual happenings at a very young age for many years. And then, a combination of that, and I wasn't feeling loved from my parents. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel, they didn't say I love you every night. They didn't say I love you when we got off the phone. They did just, that's not something either of them ever said. My dad didn't hug me or kiss me.
Right.
It's just, this is how I, so in my experience, what you're saying is, mom and dad didn't do it for me. Like, yeah, so I was running from the trauma of being abused, and I ran to mom and dad, and they didn't do it for me. So then I
Mm-hmm.
went to drugs and people who also had very traumatic experiences, and we grouped together, and
Yeah. Trauma bond. The
yeah, and
trauma
then we all
bond. Yeah.
became drug addicts, and we all went to prison, and some of us died, and now I don't know where any of them are, but they're not doing well. I know that.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to terms with how my addiction uh, was from the sexual misconduct, and then running to someone who wasn't loving me. And now I didn't say anything to them. I don't have any knowledge of, telling them what happened. But maybe I was in a certain way, with my actions and behaviors. Maybe I was trying to tell them, but because I wasn't feeling loved, I didn't feel, you know, to open up to them. I didn't feel like it was okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That makes perfect sense. Uh-huh. Definitely.
Yeah. So I just had an episode about addiction not too long ago. I think it's episode 9. Uh, and in that episode, I talk about how it's bullshit when they tell you you're always an addict, because everything we do in life
Mm-hmm.
is an addiction. Staying alive itself is an addiction, because you're feeding everything you can to possibly make you stay alive. You're doing every action and surrounded in that way. Everything in life is a cycle. It's all karma.
Yep.
It's just
It's just about finding
how
more,
quickly it
yeah,
comes
and
back to
finding
you.
and make more beneficial choices. Like, you can be addicted to
Right.
things, just make sure they're benefiting you. I sometimes get addicted to mowing my lawn
Hmm.
because I get silence. It's beautiful out, like it's something beneficial, you know. And
Right.
I just want to say, because somebody needs to hear it. I was addicted to my prescriptions, and I used the excuse of, well, they're my prescriptions. Good and damn well you're taking more than you're supposed to, and it's not helping you. Somebody needs to hear that. Anyway.
Yeah, I
um,
was addicted to painkillers as well, but it started from my own injury, but then
yeah, same.
it expanded to was buying it elsewhere after the
Hmm.
injury. 10 years I was an addict for it. So,
And if
when
anybody
I
wants
go
to
ahead.
replace theirs, I was taking Adderall, and I replaced that with inner pine bark, which you can get from a tree and turn it into a tea or chew on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And painkillers you can
What
replace with
kind what
kratom.
kind of tree is it?
It's a pine tree, inner pine bark. If you look it up, there should be some info, but
Okay.
basically you just peel off a huge chunk of the bark, peel off out the
Like
crunchy
a big
hard out
chunk.
part. Yeah, get it all the way down to as far in as you can, and the soft part on the inside, you just chew on it or make it into a tea, and it helps.
You just boil it and
Yep.
it'll okay, that's sounds like something I want to try.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. I mean, it surprised me how well it worked, but I was able to switch all of my prescriptions out for herbal remedies. There are herbal remedies for everything. You just have to look, you have to be willing to look at
Mhm.
the various options that there are. There is a herbal replacement for every single medication that they prescribed. It's just they hide it. It's just buried under all the lies. Does that make sense? Like,
Right.
all the
Yeah.
information is out there. You just have to be willing to look at it and look for it.
Yeah, and you said kratom or kratom or kratom, however
Yeah,
anyone wants to say it for the
kratom,
painkillers, right?
yeah,
Or
kratom
opiates in
is,
general.
yeah, any sort of pain medication. Actually, even the white or green vein kratom can help you replace ADHD medications. It's literally a leaf from East Asia that they grind up into a powder and put into a capsule. That is it. Just a
Mhm.
leaf.
Yeah.
And it works.
And if you're currently addicted to heroin, then you could use kratom instead of Suboxone or
Yep.
methadone, and or in place of methadone and Suboxone, you could use kratom. It's all about your mindset, and
Yep.
uh, it's when the NA and AA meetings, when they tell you you're always an addict or you're always going to be an addict, and
Not
then you see
true.
people like 3 years later, yeah, 3 years later, someone hasn't used, and then they fall back into it because they have that mindset of, oh, I'm
Right.
always an addict. So then they relapse, and they go to support groups, and their support groups are saying, oh, it's okay, you're always an addict, don't worry about it. What's that training your brain? You're
Exactly.
never an addict, actually. It's just how much time you spend paying attention to the
Right.
addiction. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
it keeps feeding the negative narrative of your own
Yeah,
life.
yeah, you're
Is
the victim.
right. You're the victim to this disease. No, you're not a victim. You can survive the disease and tell addiction to kiss your butt. Like,
Right.
you won't always be an addict.
Right. And it
You
is
are
a
only
disease. It's like a mental disease, really.
right. But just like that, that's a whole other episode to talk
Mm,
about the
yeah.
spirit. There's a spiritual solution to every problem. You just have
Right.
to figure out what within your spiritual energetic body is being triggered and manifesting in your physical body as addiction. You just have to find the trigger. When you find the trigger, you can heal it, and I guarantee you won't be craving drugs anymore.
Yeah. And I like to say this, this is something that psychically came to me one time. It said, meditation and medication.
Yep.
What's
Yep.
the difference? Okay. The T is the cross, and the cross represents Christ. And the C is a half moon, or which represents communism, is a cross, is a crescent moon, and the sickle, which are both C's, just different
Right.
way. They're both the C. So what they do, they replace meditation with medication, the fake version
Absolutely.
of healing.
Yep. Wow.
You have the real version of meditation of the cross, Christ, and you have the fake version, and they tell you right
Yep.
exactly there that they are the enemies of Christ, in that the fake version of healing is medication.
I
That's
never
not going
made
to
that
heal you at
connection before.
all.
That's amazing.
I didn't either. It
I
was
love it.
something that was psychically came to me a couple weeks
That's
ago.
incredible.
I
Yeah.
love getting little things like that.
Oh yeah, I love those. Those ones are the best.
Yeah,
That's so
something
cool.
small. I'm like, my
That's
mind
not
just,
small. Yeah, no, that's
well,
not
yeah,
small. That's a
but
big one.
it's just like, right, but it's just like you switch just that little switch, and you're like, oh, I never
Yeah,
looked at the
it
world
changes your
like
whole
that.
and that's like for everything in this, right? It's just about understanding. Like, the moment it clicks like that, you're just like,
Mhm.
oh, that's what that
Yeah,
was. Yeah. It's just about
exactly what
understanding.
you're saying. in the beginning with the Native American teacher. She said, just turn how you, and that's how I just turned everything just a little
yeah,
bit. I didn't have a guide telling me to do that, but I was just like, let me just change just a little.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's amazing. It's amazing. Just
Yeah.
taking, and you don't even, if someone, a normie right now, I don't mean to offend you by calling you a normie. It's just, the way to describe someone who isn't into conspiracy theories or isn't into spiritual nature. Or
Right.
I'll just say someone who's
We could call
hasn't
ourselves
studied
weirdies
any.
if it would
Yeah,
make
you can do
we're
that.
weirdies.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're listening to this and I forget what I was just going to say.
You were talking about shifting your perspective.
Oh, right. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, what perspective should I shift it to? It doesn't matter. You just want to see things from a new angle. You want to
Yes.
see it, do you want to shift
Yes.
yourself to you want to end up going from negative to positive, but you want to have wonderment. You want to be curious with things. You want to think of something, be like, could that be true? Then you want to look
Right.
at something like, could that person feel that way? They're telling me that they're mad at me for what I did. Did I do something wrong?
Right.
That's just, you have to have wonderment.
Absolutely. And I'm going to challenge like your listeners to take something that you've heard, whether it be a conspiracy theory or something someone said and you're like, you're dumb for believing that. Anything. Take some belief that you have decided is fake and see if you can make it make sense to you. See if you can challenge yourself to make the connections to make it make sense. I guarantee you will shift your perspective in some way, even if you're unsuccessful. You will understand what it's like to try to see somebody else's perspective.
Right. Just have the understanding that coincidences aren't a thing, that
No.
nothing is coincidence. Have that understanding, and just, you don't even have to understand that nothing is coincidence. Just change your perspective to nothing is coincidence. Just say, well, if nothing is coincidence and this and then this and then this, and none of them are coincidence, then it's all of a sudden it's a big old shift in your mind frame, and
the
it's
dots
like
connect, and
you start having
understand that
synchronicities, and as soon as you
synchronicity is the
see it.
language of God.
Right, exactly. I say that, I love that you said that, because I talk about God all the time in my personal life, and my girlfriend's sister said to her one time, she said, why is it he say everything's about God? It's like, because everything is God. Like that's why. So
I
when
call
people
it source, but God is a more like, people get what I'm saying.
Right. And it doesn't really matter necessarily if you call God creator, source,
He doesn't
life
care what you
force.
call him. You could call him Yoda.
Right.
I mean,
right. None of that matters.
It doesn't matter.
Right. So when you say that, most people say like, oh, the universe is speaking to me. It's like, yeah, it is the universe, but it's God. God is the universe.
Exactly.
And some people will call it coincidence. And it's like, no, that is your personal communication with God, a synchronicity. Once you start seeing one synchronicity, once you see one that you understand that this happened and it's not coincidence, take that understanding and apply it to everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, literally
synchronicity,
everything.
Yeah, as above, so below, with everything. A lot of spiritual people get stuck on things because they still think physically rather than spiritually. Everything is spiritually happening first, physically last. It goes spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. So when there are no such things as a physical solution to anything.
Yeah, and just to briefly touch on that, those of you that are listening that follow me, sometimes you'll see me say something like, oh, this will be interesting to see how this manifests in the collective, because events that happen they happen in the spiritual world first, and spiritual people can make the connections and see, okay, that happened in the spiritual world, something major is coming in the collective world, our collectively shared reality, something is about to happen. And that's what I'm referring to when I say, oh, it'll be interesting to see how this manifests in the collective, because
right,
it's the butterfly effect, type thing. Like a butterfly flaps its wings in Japan and it creates a huge storm here, whatever. But
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's always so interesting to see how the small things that seem small to us manifest as actual, like you'll see something that is a fractal pattern copy of that small thing in the news, or
Right.
whatever.
Right. No, well, I meditate every day, and that's probably one of those beneficial addictions you were saying. And I have the most amazing adventures all the time. I listen to people talk about spiritual happenings, and I'm just like, I'm not bragging or anything. I just have so much happen to me so often because I just look for it, that I'm just
Hmm.
like, I don't really tell anybody anything.
if you
But
if
when
you
I
have
start to
that
see a
childlike
pattern,
curiosity, you live in it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. And once I see a pattern in my meditations, I'm like, okay, this is something I got to tell people, because I see crazy shit all the time. So there's no point in telling somebody something mind blowing when it's all the time. I can't. I
i
literally can't live my life and talk about everything that happens to me. I just
I
can't.
totally
It's
understand what you're
just not
saying.
enough time.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally
so
understand.
when I see a pattern, like throughout this year, I started having my chakras crack open
Hmm.
one by one, and once it got to the third one, I I have this meditation, and it was more like a feeling than a seeing, and I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I tell my mom, I'm on the phone with her, and I'm like, look, something's going to happen that's going to break my heart, back at in home, where they are in Pennsylvania.
Mm.
Something's going to break my heart there. And then I'm going to speak about it. And that's going to, the broken heart's going to crack open my heart chakra. Speaking about it's going to crack open my throat chakra.
Hmm.
And once I speak it, it's going to crack open my third eye chakra, because I'm going to speak such truth that I'm
Hmm.
going to see nothing but truth. And
That's
what
incredible.
happened? Yes.
It
Well, I'll
happened.
tell you what exactly happened was, uh, my girlfriend's aunt, who I love dearly, Claire, her husband, he had two heart attacks and a stroke within 3 weeks of each other. And both times he had his heart attack, I felt my heart, and I had a meditation of him that day, and I felt my heart chakra light up. It's like
Wow.
my heart shifted, and then he ended up passing.
Wow.
And and my girlfriend, because she's so close to her aunt, she went up to Pennsylvania right away. And it was like, oh, my heart. And my mom was saying to me, she goes, if something is going to happen here that breaks your heart, it's going to break my heart. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I said, no, it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
She goes, is it with your girl? She goes, is it you and your girlfriend are going to break up? I'm like, no, it's not that. She's like, is it you and your daughter or something? I'm like, no. She goes, well, you can't just say that. And then it happens. And so then I'm thinking that's what it was, right? But then I do my podcast and I do episode 5 and I
And you
release what
spoke
was
on
in
it.
my throat, and it was like, oh, I already had my heart broken back there years ago, but I had to now experience the feeling because I suppressed
Hmm.
that memory. That
Yep.
speaking it uh will, and now I feel like I can see through anyone's bullshit. I can
Yeah.
see
It's
through the matrix
That's
in
amazing.
such detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's like
so
as a result of that, you become, not only do you become the most authentic version of yourself, but you see authenticity. Like even if somebody's
mhm,
trying to put up an illusion and bullshit you, you can see their authentic self. That's incredible. I
right.
love that story. That's
It's
amazing.
quite annoying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just to finish off that story, but I tell that because what you were saying, we were saying spiritually, it happens first, and what you see in the spirit world. So I saw that, okay, chakras 1, 2, and 3 cracked open in these miraculous
Yeah.
ways, both physically and spiritually for me. So I was like, oh, okay. So now this is going to happen, and boom, 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 and then something happens that's similar, but it wasn't for me. That was for my
Mhm.
girlfriend, or maybe for her aunt,
Yeah.
for them to, go from one to the next to the next. But mine was exactly as I said it would be, but I had no idea at that time. I wasn't thinking of the suppressed memory when I mentioned that,
Right.
it was suppressed. So, and, just the energy that came out of me when I released that, it was like literally, I don't want to be, I'm truthful, I'm transparent, but it was
Mhm.
literally for the 3 days, like a dick was being taken out of my crown chakra, out of my third eye, out of my throat. I'm dead serious. It was
No,
for 3 days I was experiencing this
yeah.
huge energy that was fucking me, literally, in all my chakras, and then I cleared it off.
Yeah.
But it was, what broke my heart was those feelings, and I had to relive the energy of it because
Yep.
I went to the place, the timeline, so to speak, of my body that existed, that trauma, that felt that still, and
Yep.
I had to go feel it to let it go.
Yeah.
And
That,
I
and
didn't even tell my girlfriend. That's a personal, but that's how I know that
that's
that was it, because I felt that leave all of my chakras.
that's incredible. And that's what you were saying, just to give you some confirmation in the practice that, well, I was the Native American, I was shaman that I was studying under. She was explaining to me that when we heal traumas like that, we don't necessarily have to relive them, but we will refeel them. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Like when we
yeah.
clear trauma, you don't have to live the memory again, but you may feel the same feelings that you felt when the trauma happened.
Right.
So you may
It's
have been
going to be new characters.
right.
It's
Yeah.
going, it's the movie. It's going to be new actors in the
Yeah.
the same scene,
Yep.
or,
Yeah.
or a similar
Exactly.
scene.
Or a different situation, but the same impact.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went through them recently as well, and I'm sure many people are. Like, that's me and my girlfriend, just we release our relationship traumas that we developed from past relationships, and we
Hmm.
released it together on each other, which seemed like a fight, but it was actually so beneficial for us, because it's like, I see you, that you got to release this, both of us
Yeah.
like pointed out to each other, kind of thing. And it
Isn't
was
it so
like,
rad?
oh, let's heal. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that so rad when you're in a relationship with somebody that also wants to heal into the best version of
uh,
themselves? It's so
it's
awesome.
it's so amazing, and I still have to tell the story, or actually my girlfriend's going to come on an episode here where I'm going to interview her, and we're going to tell the story of how we met. And just, we are the same, like how I'm saying you and I are living the same life, just in different spots. Her and I live the same life in different places,
Yeah.
and we were meant to be one in
Cross.
a
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's,
it's
yeah, that's
just,
so, yeah, same.
it's so amazing.
My husband and I have, when we got together, we realized that not only have we lived parallel lives, but we physically should have crossed paths. We physically crossed paths and should have met at least 7 or 8 times that we can count before we actually
Wow.
met each other. Like we had that
Wow.
many it's crazy. We worked right next to each other. I mean, it's wild.
Well, it's funny. Her and I are both from the same little county in Pennsylvania, but she moved away 20 years before I did.
Wow.
Before
That's
I moved down
crazy.
here to be with her. Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah. But we would have never met. She's 10 years older than me, so we would have never met. Uh, you know, the living up there, but she moved down here, and just I wasn't. Uh, we wouldn't have ever met up there the way I was,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's crazy.
and
You're like prepared
then all
for
of a
each
sudden
other.
we meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like she carved out this space here down in Georgia that, like, oh, we're going to live here. So I'll just go there 20 years early, I'll get everything set up, and then
Yeah.
you'll come in, and then we'll love each other.
Yeah.
uh,
Amazing.
and it's so amazing, someone who cares and understands. That's
That's,
the
yeah,
whole undertone of this
the game
episode, is the
changer.
understanding.
Yeah.
Because what is understanding but love? When
Yep.
you have a loving understanding and you're both trying to heal, yes, traumas come up and they appear to be fights to, outsiders, and they are physical arguments, or,
Right.
not physical fights, but, they are in the physical, they are happening. And it's there so you can look at the trauma and be like, get out of here. Oh, I see
Yeah.
you. I see what you're doing to me, trauma. Get out of here. That's what you
Yeah.
have to do.
Yeah.
So it has to come
Exactly.
up. You have to feel it again in order to release it, just like
Yep.
your Native American guide was telling you.
Yep. It's pretty
Uh,
rad. Yeah.
so yeah, so we're talking. We were talking about the Native American stuff a little bit earlier. Is there anything? Would you like to share a little bit on how, or like what practices you've learned from the Native Americans that helped you heal?
Well, what's really interesting is like my practice is a blend of many ancient practices. It's,
Not surprising.
yeah, my lineage, if I were to do it that way, would be Jewish. So I've studied a little of that. I've studied the Egyptian ways, the Native American ways, all of that. And what I did was I found the common areas across all of them. And I was like, well, all of these are saying the exact same thing, just in different cultural contexts, in different, like saying the same thing in different languages. I was like, they're all the same. So I just took a little of this, little of that, little of this, with mostly emphasis with Native American because I had a direct teacher that way, and kind of made my own thing, And it's just by taking all of the similarities between all of them and practicing that and whatever works for me. So
why is that not surprising? I swear I did all of those things. I learned from the ancient ways, and I've taken from Buddhism, Hinduism,
yes,
Jewish Kabbalah,
mm-hmm.
esoteric mysticism, magic, Native Americans, Christianity,
Yep.
and not even today's Christianity, ancient Gnostic Christianity,
which is very different.
Yeah.
Which
And
is very different.
You know what? Yes, it is. And what I'm learning, what I'm seeing is that, as you said, it's the same thing, just described in different terms in different areas. And that's the same with history, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Norwegians who had Odin, and then you have, the Greeks had Zeus, and all these different characters. They're all the same. And what it's making me realize is that time, as it's presented in history as, oh, this happened from 0 BC to 300 BC, and then this,
mm-hmm.
That's not true. All of that just happened together probably like 500 years ago. It was, they just took people's stories and spread it out, but it was, oh, this was all happening at once. Just, oh, now we're going to talk about England, and now we're going to say France was at a different time period after England, but no,
it all happened at the same time
together. It was about 500 years ago or so. It was when everything happened. Not the 2,000 years that they give us. All of that happened in 500 years, and I've gotten that through meditation, like you said, just picking up different practices. Picking up different practices. What's happened to me is I find myself in rituals often that I didn't, I'm not necessarily aware of until it happens. Like when my root chakra cracked open, I expelled a demon from me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through, like, all of a sudden, this on a Thursday, I get this thought that I should start burning tobacco in fires, because we have fires often.
That's a Native American practice.
Right. And I'm a member of a Native American indigenous church. I've been told my entire life that my father has part Native American in him, but I got my DNA done, but the place I got it from focuses on your mitochondrial, which is your mother's side. So nothing came back Native American. But when I talked to the Native American church, they said, a lot of people, they don't check.
They don't tell you. It's
right.
Weird. I had it done too.
Okay. Yeah. So, I do all these different things. I pick up things. And when I have an intuitive thought like that, I go with it all the time. So I just have the intuitive thought, I should start burning tobacco in my fires. So what ends up happening is the, inauguration day. So this was the day after inauguration day. So inauguration day happens, and I'm just, I'm lost first. I'm like, I'm in disbelief. I'm like, I can't believe Joe Biden's president right now. So
Yeah.
I delete Twitter, and what happens is, so that's on a Thursday, and I get that thought that day that I should start burning tobacco in the fire. So the next day, I hurt myself at work really bad. I had 400 pounds of chicken and cheese fall on me. I have a hand truck, and I'm going up a step, and the wheel, I slipped, and the whole thing just fell on me.
Oh.
And I landed on my root chakra. And if you could imagine, I couldn't put my hands down to brace me because my hands are on handles that, had I not done that, my face probably would have been crushed in. If I would have let go to, it would have been worse than it was. So I didn't brace myself. I just held on to the thing while I fell, and cracked right on my root chakra. And while it happened, it's a split happened in me. And I started seeing in the physical reality, my mind's eye split, and I started seeing everything spiritually and physically all at once. And it was, and the thought came to me, why is God doing this to me? I've been so good. And it was like, oh, that thought still existed in me, and that thought had to go. So that something had to happen to me to bring that thought out. And I start seeing with eyes open while I'm in such excruciating pain. I see my root chakra being cracked open and psychic sludge just drooping out.
Oh my God.
And I mean, it was so bad that I thought I was a paraplegic. I thought I couldn't feel my legs. I thought I had to slide myself out from under using my hands only, because I had no feeling in my legs at all. They weren't my legs at that moment. But I kept working that day, and I worked the next day. And the next day was a Saturday, and I still worked through all that pain. I mean, I lift a lot of heavy stuff. I couldn't bend over, let alone pick stuff up and bend over. So, and I still finished work. And eventually, it helped me to start getting proper form while I'm working. So now I just told this to Chris X. Matt on my interview with him the other day, was, I'm super strong all of a sudden.
Like the superhuman strength.
Yeah, I really do have that. I toss around things that are like 150 pounds. I'll pick it up with my left hand and just toss it, just like with ease.
Seemingly out of nowhere, right?
Yeah. Well, I am a strong guy, and I worked out for a while, but like this extra strength is weird. Yeah. But back to that story is that, so that's a Saturday that I finished that up. Now I have a fire that night, and I have a fire the next day. Well, actually, it's kind of like, we get the fire rekindled from last night that was still real hot in there. And I had been burning tobacco around, walking in a circle around the fire pit, burning tobacco, just tossing it in there.
That's so cool.
And I listened to music that's centralized around Jesus. I don't listen to anything else. That's another story entirely. But so as I'm listening to music, tossing tobacco in the fire, it's getting up this mix of, things going on in the air.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, not just the smoke, but the energy. There's something happening. I can feel it.
Yeah, the spirit of the fire. If you're doing Native American, that's so cool.
Right. So then I have this special tea that I make sometimes, and I had too much that day. And what ended up happening to me is what people often describe as what happens in ayahuasca treatment, is that they purge, but nothing comes out. But they feel relief, and that's what happens.
Yeah, that's what we do in ceremony. We purge it's like vomiting, but nothing comes out. Yeah.
But I didn't do it on purpose. So what happens to me? I drank too much tea that day, and then at night it's like 7:30 or so, and it's Sunday. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna, go to bed. So, and I'm in a goofy type of mood, and me and my daughter are laughing and joking around, and then I start to feel real sick. I'm taking her to her room to say goodnight to her, and we're just walking, but I start laughing and I start feeling sick. And then I start laughing again with her, 5 minutes later, and I feel like I'm about to throw up. So I'm like, all right, I gotta go. So then I go in my bedroom and my girlfriend says something that makes me laugh. And I, having this injury, I could barely move, but I all of a sudden, as fast as I could, get to the bathroom and start hurling. I had two giant hurls and nothing came out.
Yeah.
But the relief and
Yeah.
that I had on me, I just swing open the door and I'm like, I just threw up a demon. I was just saved by Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, I knew you were going to say that. Like somehow she knew what happened.
That's crazy.
And it was the laughter. And then the day after that, I find out that Native Americans, why they burn tobacco is for protection, to release negative energies. And I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
Even with all my Native American knowledge.
It's crazy the things that we just intuitively do.
Yeah.
Because it's legit. Like on some level, we know. On some level, we know how to take care of ourselves and how to protect ourselves spiritually. You didn't need anybody else to tell you, because it's like programmed in your DNA. You knew what to do.
Right.
That's
and I
incredible.
can figure out, yeah. And I have a similar story for like all my chakras now, there's, but it wasn't the same throwing up that it was, because that was the anger and fear and hate that I operated out of for so long. And I was trying to tell someone this on a Facebook group yesterday, that someone said, I think there's a demon, and this person says, you don't need to jump there, it's probably something explainable. I'm like, hold on, your understanding of a demon is probably incorrect.
Movies. Yeah.
But what a demon really is just, it's negative energy that lodges itself in our chakras, or anywhere actually, but when it lodges itself in our chakras, it becomes our demons, which we say, we release our demons.
Yep.
It's trauma. And that's what
pain.
Creates it. Right. Yeah. It's all of that is negativity that feeds itself. And what it does is we let it in because we think it's going to protect us from that. And what it does is then we have multiple personality disorder. We have dissociative disorder.
Yep.
And what is that? Rather than just your emotions, all your emotions have their own personality. So, how you're going to react to a situation depends on what emotion is at the forefront.
Absolutely.
And that's the same exact thing as multiple personality disorder. But that's with everybody. But yours happened to gain its own life because you fed it, because it was protecting you. So your free will fed it energy and kept giving it to, quote unquote, the light, giving the light over to the darkness, essentially. That's a demon. That's, I've expelled it out of myself. I know what a demon is. And when the first words in my mind are, I was saved by Christ, well, that's what it was. And then what I experienced over the next 10 days was the Buddhist definition of nirvana, which is a state of absolute bliss. Nothingness, bliss, of nothing but bliss.
Yeah.
And for 10 days. And you only get that feeling on shrooms. And, you can't get that feeling from humans. And I had that strongly for 36 hours. And when I say you get it from shrooms, you get it from 10 minutes. You get a 10-minute window of shrooms where you feel God's love. I had that for 36 hours.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know exactly.
And then for 10 days.
It's blowing my mind a little bit that you're telling me, you know how earlier I was talking, you're like, wow, the same thing happened to me. This is the same thing. You're describing something that happened to me as well. I'm grateful to know that there's someone else who
my
has
sister or something.
This. Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
And it's funny because you said your lineage is Jewish, because I get a lot in meditation that I'm an Israelite, that I'm not Jewish, that I'm an Israelite. And I told my girlfriend that for the first time the other day. I think it was yesterday, maybe, that I'm an Israelite. I get that all the time. It must be ancestral things, but so I want to tell everybody real quick before I get into that next part.
I'm gonna run to the restroom while you're talking.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. So the way that I found stone Buddha. Not that I found that on this new account that the reason why I asked her here was because of her tweet last night, or maybe, yeah, it was last night, where she said, has anybody gotten to the stage where they think that they're Jesus Christ? That's a fun stage. That part of your awakening. And that's what set all of this off is her tweet of, have you gotten to that stage? So then I'm reading the comments, and I never really put this together in the manner that I did while seeing the comments. So I go down the comments and I'm seeing people say, no, I was Lucifer. I see several people saying that. I'm like, no, I got that way long ago. And then I got the Jesus thing after that. I was like, oh, and I know this to be a video game. So I'm like, oh, that's, I know this to be erased already. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. But I'm like, oh, that's the progression, the natural progression. I didn't realize other people got Lucifer and Jesus, and then something else. Then there's another stage after that. So I'm just like, oh, wait a second. So when you're talking about the ancestral DNA type stuff, and I get all the time that I'm an Israelite, I get a lot of times in meditation, for a period of time, for maybe 2 weeks, I got a lot of King of the Jews. I could feel the crown, the thorns, poking in around the crown chakra. I could feel all of that. And I kept getting, like, people were despising me. And they're like, King of the Jews, spitting on me, for like 2 weeks straight. I got that like every day. And I never said anything because I was like, I'm not Jesus. I don't want to tell people and them thinking that I think I'm Jesus because I'm.
Yeah.
But that's just how it happens. But I was just saying about your tweet last night is how this whole thing even got set up.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah. So let's see. I think we talked about a lot of different things here.
Yeah, we covered quite the spectrum, didn't we? I just want to say, like, anybody who's going through their like spiritually awakening process and stuff, you're not crazy. You're waking up. We've been made to think that the symptoms of waking up is insanity, and it would be insane to stop, continuing down your journey. It may feel like you're losing your mind, but you kind of lose your mind and go from living in your mind to living from the heart space, and it's well worth the journey.
Oh yeah. And I think actually, I had this thought not too long ago that all the insane asylums are actually all awake people, and they always have been, and they always it was always that way, and that's why they experiment on these people's brains. With just in the 70s even, they were taking pieces of brain out of people.
Well, like, I mean, in ancient times, they were people with like schizophrenia and stuff were lifted up as spiritual leaders in their community because they have the ability to work between worlds. And I think that if people who are in insane asylums and mental hospitals were given training rather than medication, it would be a very different story.
And guided sacred plant trips. I got that right away when I first did my trip. Was schizophrenics have, how when you do LSD, for example, when you do LSD, your brain it like expands, and you feel it pulsing. And when you're coming down, you feel it start collapsing in on itself, and it's not pulsing as much. But there's a point where your brain feels swollen. You're not spiritual anymore, but your brain is swollen. It's right at that moment, I got the message that that's what's happening to schizophrenics. They're stuck in between, and they need a guided sacred plant trip to get them out of it. They need to know because they're being told, they're taking medicines that are just dumbing down their brain, their physical brain, so that they can't tell people what's happening, but they're seeing and they're experiencing everything still. It's just they're not, they're just dumbed down so they don't talk about it. But that's what they need, is the healing.
if a schizophrenic person were to sit down and speak with a Native American shaman, it would be a very different conversation than sitting down with a doctor.
Oh yeah, and they would actually be healed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Doctor makes money. Yeah, a healer is just trying to heal.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to go because my kids are.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem at all. I mean, this was a great episode. I'm so glad that we got to connect, and we talked about such wonderful
Everything.
things, and we have such a connection that I didn't know about. So,
Yeah,
I'm glad to meet another member of my soul tribe.
absolutely.
And do you have anywhere you want people to look for you?
Right now I'm just on Twitter, so it's Matrix Pirate 12 at Matrix Pirate 12 Stone Buddha. That's me. Feel free to DM me, say what's up, follow me, don't follow me. It's all good.
Yeah, and if this story inspires you to want to talk about your awakening or any traumas that you've been through, or if you just want to contact the show at all, you can send me an email at thegreatchakraawakening777@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, which is thegreatchakraawakening777.podbean.com, and you can find my whole all my episodes there. This episode will be aired in a couple weeks, and you can find interviews of me on other episodes, and you have the Facebook page, the Facebook group, the Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff's on there. So make sure you go follow Stone Buddha at Matrix Pirate 12, and then you can find me if you're here from Stone Buddha's following. You can follow me as well.
All right, it was nice chatting.
Yeah, you too. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.